So good morning to everyone who's attending this session, and welcome to the session, which is called Developing Naturally Occurring Affordable and Workforce Housing in the Changing Real Estate Market. If this is not the session you thought it was, this is your cue. Never know with this whole online platform, I did this in the last session. I breezed in and out of a couple of different sessions. But here we hope to discuss affordable housing. All of us who work in this environment know what a challenge developing and preserving affordable housing already was, and how this pandemic has exaggerated and exacerbated the need for more housing. And our construction costs have gone up, our equity pricing is going down, and just the buildings that we are building are getting smaller. And so the panel we have here is a group of very creative developers. And I'm really excited about hearing from you all because you're addressing this high demand for affordable housing, but without using the traditional ways of funding, like the tax credit. So to me, when I think of building affordable housing, I think of 4%, 9% credits, HUD 202 programs, or other similar funding with some gap financing thrown in. But here on this panel, we hope to discuss alternate funding types, construction. You're addressing more of modular construction, and also, kind of addressing the design inequities, which knowingly or unknowingly come into the affordable housing design. So this is kind of the format of our discussion. And I look forward to hearing what each of you have to say. And I think our first panelist up is Greg Reeves from Mosaic Development Partners. And I had to reduce everybody's bios to not make it a 5-minute long narrative here, but Greg has spent more than 30 years working in publicly traded and private companies. He graduated from Howard University in Washington, D.C. with a BS in chemical engineering. He also played Division I soccer in college. Now that must really prepare you for a lot. He began his career with McNeil Consumer Product Company, a division of Johnson & Johnson, and then joined Merck and Company. Greg left Merck and joined a mid-sized real estate development company where he became a member of the executive team and held specific responsibility for operations, hiring, marketing, public relations, commercial leasing, and government relations. He helped manage 5 million square feet of real estate and assisted in the acquisition of 2 highly desirable real estate assets, totaling more than $300 million in value. And then in 2008, Greg and his partner, Leslie, who's our other panelist, they formed Mosaic Development Partners to focus on investing in disenfranchised communities to reduce blight, increase jobs, and drive new market-based approaches to creating greater housing affordability. To date, their investments have totaled more than $120 million in direct investments in Philadelphia neighborhood. So with that, Greg, take it away.
Why, thank you, Vidi, and hello, Joshua and Leslie. It's a pleasure. Let me just share my screen, and let me see where that screen share is. Do you all see a screen that has Mosaic Development Partners on it?
We sure do.
And it's got nothing else, correct?
Correct.
I want to make sure it's the right screen. I'm technologically challenged at times, but good morning, everyone. Really pleased to be here. What I'm going to do is just talk really briefly about our company, our ethos, and some of the projects that we've done. Leslie's going to get a little more in detail about some of the mechanisms that we've applied to bring kind of mixed community affordability. Just to get started. Oops. Well,
back arrow.
Where's that? Right here?
On your keyboard. Just do back arrow. That should get you back.
All right.
It should. It didn't.
Let's go to, well, I can start. No, I'll just start here. We started in 2008. Leslie and I did. This was in the midst of really a very terrible recession. It was before the pandemic that we were dealing with, but this was a time when ground up real estate, commercial real estate was really starting to collapse in the Philadelphia market. Leslie and I, the reason why we started the company, we had met at a regional developer, very successful developer, and we found that there weren't people of color who were participating in commercial real estate development. And she and I were among a handful of people that were even in the space. And so we wanted to create our own company that had a different focus. One is we wanted to work in disenfranchised communities, and those were communities that we felt were being underinvested. And two, we were really focused on creating community-based wealth and wealth-related programs, which kind of drove us in a different direction about how we put real estate together. If you look at what we've been able to accomplish just by this slide, we have really redeveloped about 1 million square feet. It might be a little bit more in Philadelphia. And when we talk about that, we talk about how much blight that we've removed specifically. We've invested more than $40 million in affordable housing programs, and our affordability that we speak to, Vidi had mentioned, 9%, 4%. We have done a 9% low-income housing tax credit project. That was for a veterans housing project that I'll describe in just a moment. But we do a lot of workforce housing focus. That's what we really focus on with respect to moderate and affordable housing. It really is for kind of the middle community, the lower to middle community that is left out of programs that are very supportive around housing, specifically those that are sponsored by the housing authorities around the country. And we've created significant jobs as a component of what we've done. Part of our funding structure is not just on housing, but it's also on building entrepreneurship and commercial retail. I'll just give you a look at some of the projects that we've worked on and provide a little bit of flavor around that. Diamond Green, believe it or not, was our first project. It was a student housing development. And the reason why it gave us so much insight is when we developed this, it was 128,000 square feet. And we partnered with a local community group. It was a not-for-profit that actually owned the land. They put out an RFP. And the goal for us was, as a part of community wealth building, was how do we think about doing what we thought was the right use for that community. This is a project that was located literally next door to Temple University. And when I say next door, I mean within, let's say, 30 feet of the university, but it was a community-led program. So we wanted the community to be a part owner in the project rather than someone who just approves a project that's there for Temple's use. The second piece to this was that we constructed it modularly, and that's when Leslie and I really started to understand the benefits of modular construction. We did that in 2011. Now, just to give you some insight, we started this project in November of 2011, and the building was open in August of 2012, and it's a 130,000 square foot building. So to be able to construct and open a building in less than 10 months is something that is very, very difficult to do. And I believe it's impossible to do without modular construction. So we next went to Edison Square. That is an adaptive reuse building. It was an old shuttered building in a very tough neighborhood in Fairhill. What we were looking to do there was create really an anchor for the neighborhood for redevelopment. We actually took an old school property. We tore down 2/3 of that property, brought in a community-based shopping center in what people have considered to be a food desert. We brought the uses, we created about 100 jobs. 90 of those jobs are walkable to the shopping center from that neighborhood. And then surrounding that, we actually built our veterans housing project to support that. Eastern Lofts, this is a project that we really started to get into this kind of mixed income development, mixed use, mixed income. And this was done through new market tax credits, and the Edison Square project was as well. But what's interesting about using new markets on Eastern Lofts is that this is the project where we use both job creation through bringing new businesses to that location, but also housing. We tied the housing component to it. And 36% of those units were what we considered market rate affordable, which is a target for us at 80 AMI. We currently have that open and operating. It was a historic tax credit project that was mixed with new market tax credits. And we actually won an award for that in the city of Philadelphia. Cheney University, I will pass that because this is an ongoing project, but it's one of our focuses on building wealth, equity, and skill sets with a historically Black college and university. Cheney University, I will tell you, is the first HBCU constituted in the country. It was built in 1837, or instituted in 1837. Edison 64, this is the housing project that I told you about that we did. That was a 9% housing project. The reason that we did this, it was a veterans housing program because the school that we actually bought from the school district has a really sordid history where they had more high school graduates from that single high school go to Vietnam and die than any other high school in the country. 64 high school graduates that went to Edison High School died in Vietnam. And so we felt compelled because of the community's knowledge and deep understanding of what happened at that high school that we wanted to honor that site in a way that we could only do it by taking what were formerly homeless veterans and housing them in that location. Gulaski Labs, this is another really interesting project where we've done a mixed income housing development that goes with commercial development. We have we're building the housing through modular housing. We've constructed a modular building that we think fits really well. They're all coming in at about 80 to 100 AMI. We're bringing a makerspace, a ghost kitchen, a landscape architect, a not-for-profit and entrepreneurial community cooperative that's coming in, and we're locating our second office there. The other thing that we're doing here that's really interesting is a part of the community wealth building program that Leslie will talk about to greater extent because she was kind of the architect of this, is we've done a community crowdfund, the first one that we came up with. We were having a problem. It wasn't just about bringing affordable housing for us. We knew that the problems were deeper in neighborhoods and that we really needed to think about how to bring real community wealth and more than community acceptance. And so we came up with we found through the Obama Jobs Act in 2009, constituted in 2009, that there was an opportunity to do a crowdfund. And that allows investors to invest in real estate and other projects for as little as $500, where they can be a part owner in the project. So we added that to our financial platform. And for the first time, we were able to bring neighbors, literally people who would never see themselves as investing in the project, as now being owners in this project. This is what started with us. We've started to think about what that means, what it does in neighborhoods, both emotionally, but really in a long-term strategic standpoint. We're taking this forward in all of our projects like Sharswood. This is another mixed income, mixed use development. It's in a food desert. It's 100 units of housing where we've dedicated over 35% that are going to anywhere between 30 AMI and 80 AMI. We're using a mix of vouchers and new market tax credits to help execute that. And we also added the community crowdfund to that project. And then the Navy Yard, which Leslie will talk about. We were awarded with a development partner out of California, Ensemble Investments, the rights to redevelop the Philadelphia Navy Yard. That's about 109 acres of land. There's been a significant investment made there already. We're taking on really the second phase of that, but we're projecting about 3,000 residential units, 2 million square feet of bioscience and biotech, and then a number of associated essential services that come with that. All in all, that's about a $2.6 billion project, and we're thrilled to be able to take that on as our next phase. This just gives you a couple of views of the projects that we've done, kind of before and after, to let you know the neighborhoods that we've gone into. Diamond Green, this was the student housing development where we partnered with the local community group and a developer. This is the before, the bottom is the after. Edison Square, That was the former Edison High School. You could see in the little corner, there was a 4-alarm fire that occurred because there was some significant drug activity going on. And while they were cooking something, it lit the building on fire. It was significant damage that occurred. This is the after of what you see that's created in terms of the center. Eastern Lofts, this was a building that was vacant for 35 years. This is actually the building after it was cleaned up. It had about 4 feet of trash on 2 floors. It's about 3/4 of an acre on each floor. It's a large building, about 70,000 square feet. And if you look at the bottom, this is what we turned it into. This is the Veterans Housing Project. This is the part of the building that we retained. This is how it looks after. Galaski Labs is the mixed income project, the first one that we did that we brought in the community investment crowd fund. This is how it looks now. And Sharswood is the larger community crowd fund project that I mentioned that's also in a food desert. And this started construction in November. And if you look at the lower piece, this is what we expect that it will be looking like when it's operating in 2022. So with that, Vidi, I just wanted to give some quick information about who we are, and Leslie will get into more detail about how we do what we do.
This was great. Greg, thank you. Really interesting projects. And I am looking forward to hearing about Navy Yard and other initiatives that you mentioned that Leslie will talk about. But before we get to Leslie, we will hear from Joshua Pollard, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Amicello, a mission-driven real estate firm. The mission of Amicello is home, health, and wealth. And prior to founding Amicello, Joshua led U.S. housing research for Goldman Sachs from 2009 to 13. During his time at Goldman Sachs, Joshua led research of $1 billion real estate IPO and received numerous awards, including an addition to Forbes 30 Under 30 list, as he was the youngest person in Goldman Sachs history to lead an equity research practice. In addition to chairing the board of Amicello Cares, the education-based nonprofit affiliated with Amicello, Joshua is a board member for companies that are building entrepreneurs, supporting communities, and creating a 21st century workforce. This community-enhancing work earned Joshua an invitation to the White House to receive the President's Volunteer Service Award, among other awards and recognitions. Joshua, an avid writer, also contributes to Forbes.com on real estate. Joshua, it's all yours.
Thank you, Vidi. I appreciate it. I can't remember the last time someone actually read my bio, so please don't do that again. I lost my hair.
So much of it out. I mean,
I lost my hair when Goldman asked me to lead housing research at 24. So my age, I won't share. I'm well past 30 though. I will say that. Back to those Forbes 30 Under 30 days. But thank you, Vidi. And I just want to broadly say a thank you to the folks who put together this conference year in and year out. It is indeed phenomenal. I'm excited to participate even in this digital format. The reality, and my screen is shared so you can get a sense of what we do, but I'll just tell you that this piece, while I was in New York and having a fantastic career at Goldman, got poached to a hedge fund, Forbes, and you name it. The reality is that my family was homeless for a couple of stints when I was young, and a lot changed for me when one of the wealthiest people in Pittsburgh paid for me to go to a private high school for my last 2 years of school. By the time I went to college, I saw a supply-demand curve and completely fell in love with the social science of economics. And for a lifetime have been trying to find ways to help and support neighborhoods like the one I grew up in once we got out of homelessness, and convert those into places that prospered, not just for those who became new entrants, but for those who are already an existing part of those communities. Along the way, I was sitting in a limo with a group of real estate developers, and I was asked a question that changed my life. I was asked, hey, Josh, why don't all Black people make it out of the hood like you? And this was not a question that I was asked in a very friendly and educationally inspired way. It was very much, hey, Josh, what's wrong with your people? By someone who was not a part of, quote, my people. And also, irrespective of race or anything else, he was just flat out rude. And I began to explain to him the education system, the judicial system, with thoughts in the back of my mind to the healthcare system and how things ultimately impact the neighborhoods like the one I grew up in. His response was, yeah, Josh, I hear you. But if you had all the money in my bank accounts, what would you do? And at that time in 2012, 2013, it was a checkmate question because I had diagnosed the issue many times, but didn't have a reasonable answer for what I would do if money were less of an objection to the transformation of communities. What I've had the opportunity to lead with a fantastic group of people over the last 7 years now is Omicello. And Omicello, in my opinion, is one of the solutions to that question that I was posed. Omicello is a mission-driven real estate investment firm. Our mission is home, health, wealth. We believe in two core principles at the heart. Number one, that housing is a social determinant of health. And number two, that neighborhood improvement can and should result in economic livelihood for existing community members. So how do we do it? This is what this chart here is ostensibly intimating. We really do three things. We invest, we build, and we teach. From an investment side, and you'll see this off to the right, we focus primarily on affordable and workforce housing in neighborhoods that are on the cusp of significant change. We were successful in raising our first real estate fund just a few years ago, which we fully deployed. And we are in the process of raising our next fund, which is actually $100 million. We're excited about what's possible, and there'll be more to come on that shortly. From the next pieces that we built, embedded into this, we actually have an internal construction effort. The first step of that internal construction effort was actually to make sure we weren't getting beat about the head and shoulders by a very frothy construction industry right now. But very immediately, we learned that our health system partners also had a problem. And that problem was that there are too many people living in institutional care who should otherwise be a part of the fabric of the community. Allowing them to be a part of the fabric for the community was also beneficial, not only to the health system's balance sheets, but also the government's balance sheets when you think about the economics of Medicaid and Medicare. So our construction company is very focused on providing home adaptations with a very strong partner. Last and certainly not least is the left-hand side of this table or this graphic, which is that we teach. Omicello Cares, which I was instructed by some of my mentors not to start at the same time as Omicello. My advice was, Josh, go build a great real estate development company and then start the nonprofit. I would have it no way like that. And as a result, Omicello Cares was born. The mission of Omicello Cares is to lift the incomes of existing community members in low to moderate income neighborhoods. Why? Because at the end of the day, our strong belief is that if a neighborhood's going to change the way many neighborhoods have changed in Pittsburgh, the way they've changed in Philly and other parts of the state, if the person who was originally there is still going to be there in 10 years, successfully, healthily, their income more than likely had to go up. And so what we've done is we've brought income changing education to those neighborhoods. Our signature program is called the Real Estate Co-Powerment Series, where we're demystifying the development process for community members. We've already had over 130 folks in the Pittsburgh region graduate from that course. And those folks have already purchased 40 units of housing and commercial real estate themselves. I get so excited about that for the simple fact that we are investing in building right alongside the folks that we're teaching. I very much look forward to talking about how we partner with local nonprofits, social services agencies, and integrated health systems. But some of our favorite partnerships are actually with developers who believe in the same ethos that we do. And why I'm excited to share this virtual stage with Leslie and Greg. I had to chase Leslie and Greg down. I won't put all their business out on the street, but it took me about a year before they would even take my call. But
that's not true.
Why are you gonna call us out? Why are you gonna call us out?
It was 9 months, Josh.
You know, I'm sorry. But we love finding diverse thought pattern, just incredible development partners like Greg and Leslie, Mosaic Development Partners that we can work with. It's been such a wonderful relationship. And at the end of the day, we see ourselves as a part of the capital solution for developers like Greg and Leslie, and also for others. And so we're excited to be here. I'd love to talk more about some of the things that we've done, but I think I've spoken enough, and I'll turn it back to Biddy to turn it over to Leslie.
Thank you, Joshua. So we're going to hold the questions maybe after Leslie has had her time to speak about the Navy Yard and other projects, but please, everybody, feel free to add your questions to the chat, and then we'll go through them. And we hope to make it a useful, productive, and informal session because we have so much great knowledge to share, so dialogue is really important. And now, last but not least, Miss Leslie Smallwood Lewis. Let's see. How did she get to this point? There is a Bachelor of Science from Brown University and a law degree from Villanova. And Leslie started her real estate career in 2001. She joined the Goldenberg Group in Bluebell, Pennsylvania. And then in 2008, along with Greg, they started Mosaic Development Partners. Since its founding, Mosaic has developed over $120 million in real estate projects and has created over 300 construction jobs and 150 full-time jobs. Mosaic is currently working with Cheney University in reimagining its campus and reprogramming approximately 400,000 square feet of underutilized and vacant buildings. And this is the fun part. In 2017, Mosaic was awarded a Preservation Alliance Jury Award for its Eastern Lofts project that I think Greg mentioned earlier. And then in August 2019, it was featured in the New York Times. And most recently in 2020, Leslie and Greg were ranked in the top 76 most influential people in Philadelphia. And to top that, they were selected as part of the master developer team for the Navy Yard. I remember writing to Greg and Leslie that I cannot read the news anymore without their mention, and somewhere and everywhere. So Leslie, it's all yours.
Thank you, Biddy. Good morning, everyone. I am not going to talk much about myself at all because Greg did a wonderful job kind of giving you an idea of what we do. What I'd like to get into is really the meat and the potatoes of how we do what we do. And I think it will probably trigger some questions. Let's be clear. Affordable housing, working in neighborhoods, it is very difficult work. It takes massaging, it takes an evolution of iterations of pro formas and design. And so it's not for the faint of heart, but for those who are truly committed to affordability and really making a difference in neighborhoods, it is probably the most rewarding work that I think that we all can do. So for us, we have been able to utilize tax credits and special financing mechanisms to make this a reality. I cut my teeth in it at the Goldenberg Group. I worked on a very large project in West Philadelphia. Some of you might be aware of it, Park West Town Center, which is a very large commercial property, but it incorporated new market tax credits as one of the funding sources. And I started to really understand what that entailed. And particularly it was put into place for commercial uh, um, real estate transactions, but it also applies to mixed use. And that's how we have used that funding source, I think, very effectively. We used it on our Gillespie project. We've used it on Eastern. We're using it on Sharswood. And I'm happy to say that they have approved new market tax credits for another 5 years and $5 billion a year. So it is a very nonpartisan funding source. Both sides of the aisle support it because investors make money on it, and the left side appreciates it because it infuses economic development money into disenfranchised areas. So what we've been able to do is really insert affordability, typically in our deals, of about 30% of our residential units, because we've been able to utilize that source of funding. So I would encourage people to actually look more into it. Typically, you will need to bring on a consultant to help you with that. It is a very complicated structure because of all the tax implications. So you need to have someone who's very well versed in it. But it is a very good source. It's a very competitive source of funding. It comes out at usually annually. So you need to have a project that's in a very, doesn't have to be completely shovel ready, but it needs to be pretty baked for you to be competitive once the credits are released, because once the credits are released, they move very, very quickly. Typically, institutions that apply for those credits have a pipeline already in mind when they submit their applications. So this is a good opportunity to start looking back and seeing who's received allocations and start understanding who might get them and start forging relationships with those institutions. So when the next round comes around, you might be able to position yourself for those credits. So that's one source that we've used. Greg will go into, I think, a little bit more, but we have effectively used modular construction as a way of cost savings in our construction projects. It allows us to save on interest cost because we're able to build faster. It actually is just a more affordable way to construct, especially in places where you have union construction, which typically will increase your cost by 30, almost sometimes 40%. So if you're able to incorporate modular construction in your design, then that is a way to definitely save on some cost. We are using that in our most current project in construction, Sharswood, very effectively. We're doing 98 units. So it's really been quite an impact on the cost of construction. So I'm interested, and if Greg, if you can move to the slide for the Navy Yard, this will be very interesting because we are going to have to uncover and really be even more creative in this Navy Yard project that we are embarking upon in 2021. It's beautiful. It's a 15 to 20-year runway with this project, with its size and mass and magnitude. And so, as Greg mentioned, it's about a 2.5 million square foot project. It's broken into 3 components. It incorporates what's called the historic core location, which is indicated in the red in the center, which will really be the downtown of the Navy Yard. And that's where a lot of the residential will be situated. So that's where we'll be focusing a lot of the affordable housing component of this project. A total of about 2,800 to almost 3,000 units is what's planned. And if you go to the next slide, Greg, you'll see that we are committing to a minimum of 15% affordable housing, which would equate to about 420 units of affordable housing. They'll range from 60% to 120% AMI for the most part, targeting the 80% AMI, which we said is really where our sweet spot is. And that's really what typically people call workforce housing, falls into that AMI designation. The other thing that we've never done anyway, which is clustering, because we think that that is the wrong direction. And we see that it was a failed attempt by housing authorities across the country to cluster affordable housing. So the city has recognized that, PHA has recognized that, PHFA has recognized that clustering is not the way to go in the future. So the affordable housing will be spread out amongst the different buildings that we're planning at the Navy Yard. You've also heard the horror stories of where people have done mixed income buildings, and the finishings, the size of the units, the amenities are subpar or different for the affordable units as opposed to the market rate units, which is just a travesty. I think we can all agree by having that kind of dichotomy between affordable and a market rate is just not the way to go. So obviously all of our units will be comparable, whether it's someone paying $3.30 a square foot for their unit or someone paying $1.50 a square foot for their unit. They will be comparable. We've also agreed to a 40-year deed restriction of affordability. There's been a lot of discussion that a lot of these 30 years are turning over, and then once they turn over, they no longer are affordable. People want to convert, restore, renovate them, and now convert them to market rate housing. So with a 15-year runway, we'll have a good flow of affordability, so they won't all start at the same time, so that there will be a consistent nature of affordability in the Navy Yard over the next 40 plus years. So I think that'll be a real benefit for that project as well. But what I was going to say is that we're not going to be able to use some of the sources of funding that we've been using typically to create affordability. New market tax credits will be difficult in the Navy Yard because it doesn't sit in a qualifying census tract. There are other ways to implement and bring in new market tax credits through what they call target population, but it's a very difficult thing to do. So we will be looking at other ways to infuse affordability here. One, modular construction, we're already talking about it. We're thinking, and you got to design from day one for modular construction. So we will be including some of that, but we will be also exploring the 80-20 financing. We have not been able to take advantage of that in our prior projects because you have to have a certain amount of mass of units to justify the process of going through to secure that type of funding. Typically, you need to have 100 plus units to make it a viable opportunity to pursue. So we really will be doing more exploration into that funding source. It's tax exempt finance bond financing for large residential projects. 80% are market rate, 20% are affordable. That's why we set a minimum of 15% because we might boost that up to 20% to qualify for that funding source. It also typically is at 50% AMI, not 60. So that's something that we would need to explore as well. So that's one avenue that we will be looking at. We're also in a lot of locations, tax increment financing has been used to help with affordability as well. I know that puts a real strain on the school district. So that is something that we'll explore, but there are other similar structures that have been utilized that do not impose any stress to the local school districts, but lean more on state taxes that are being relieved. So we're going to be exploring that also. So the takeaway is Mosaic has been in the trenches, and we uncover and explore and research every opportunity for funding sources to infuse. And we have not typically relied on the 4% and the 9% because they are 9% are highly competitive. I know the one deal that we did have, we were not approved the first year, and then we had to wait for the another cycle to come around to be able to secure those credits. And 4% on their own don't always fill the gap. So you're always seeking and for other additional dollars from your local municipality or other state dollars that are not always ideal because they also trigger other regulatory things that can actually add costs to your project. So there's always this balancing act that we are always in the midst of as we try to make these numbers work. So I don't want to go much further. I want to have the panel to be able to really look at some of these questions that are coming in so that we can answer those and get a little bit more into the weeds. One last point. I did want to bring up crowdfunding. I know Greg mentioned it to you. It's not so much that it's coming in as a real help to create the affordability, but what it does do, it really, it's a community engagement mechanism. It allows the immediate community to invest in the projects that are going on in their neighborhoods. A lot of times when you see development, the neighborhoods feel put upon. They feel as if, you know, these big bad developers are coming into their neighborhoods. They have very little say. They just see projects going up and there's no benefit other than hopefully they're at least being able to visit these and benefit from the goods and services that come in. But this is real community engagement and development. They now can become an investor. They can become an owner in a project that's going on right in their neighborhood. And there's an educational component that comes along with it, which we think is very, very important. Oftentimes in these communities, we talk about it. They don't talk about investment around the dining room table. This is not how this community has been raised. It's been missing. And when it comes to stocks, when it comes to real estate, investment in general. So it allows a real educational component to be infused into the community. And then they can take that learning and then share it with their kids and their grandkids. And then we start to change the trajectory of community wealth, community generational wealth. So we do want to implement that at the Navy Yard. It'll be wider and larger, citywide. Low and moderate income folks will be able to invest in the projects that we're doing at the Navy Yard. We're really excited about what this can turn into. We'll be partnering with the Chamber of Commerce, with the City of Philadelphia to get the word out. So we want this to be different. We want this to be exciting for the city and for the residents of the city. And then they become ambassadors for this project. Then when you come down to the Navy Yard, you're like, I own a piece of this. You know, it's a whole different mindset that comes with it. So thank you. I'm not going to talk anymore. Let's answer some questions.
This was great. There we go. This is really exciting. I just cannot believe that all the different ways you are building affordable housing, workforce housing, and not really using the tax credits. So as you can see, we are short in time and we have a whole list of questions from our audience. So I'm just gonna jump right in. For developments where you didn't use tax credits and we're targeting 80% of AMI residents, do you still have to income qualify the residents?
Yes.
Yes, we do. Yep, on an annual basis. Absolutely.
Great.
Yep.
And have you maintained the local population while creating these developments? I think this is more for preservation projects, maybe perhaps, or has there been a frequent movement displacement?
Yeah, so we actually created a term that we called, there's the whole idea around gentrification. And Leslie and I created a term that we call gentrigation. And what we're looking to do is, we know that we need mixed income. So it goes to the idea around, we don't want to localize poverty in centered spaces. We want to break up poverty. So we do need to integrate people in. to those communities, but we're integrating people that have a belief and an understanding about how to work in communities and how to live in communities, particularly communities of color. And so when we're gentrigating, it's about really creating programs that give residents who are there opportunities to participate. It is with affordable housing. It is giving them jobs while we're going through construction and after. And it's also giving them opportunities for entrepreneurship. So we've been really effective at all of that. And in most of the properties that we also take, we're taking on either vacant or blighted or properties that have been in significant disrepair for many, many years, and we're bringing them back to life. So we've been very careful in our strategy that we're not seeking to replace the neighborhood, but to be additive to that neighborhood.
That's great. Now we have somebody in the audience, well, it's Matt Keene, who said he was a housing coordinator at the Edison project.
That's awesome.
And he has a lot of compliments for that building. So I just wanted to share that for the group.
That's great.
The next question is also about Edison 64 and whether the rents are driven by, are rents for the units at Edison 64 driven by the VA supportive housing VASH vouchers? If not, how are the rents supported? So do you have any subsidies from VASH
We have
vouchers?
some, but not all.
Some, right.
Yeah, it's
percentage
probably
of the
less than
units.
half that are
Mhm.
subsidized. The rest are just supported. And for those of those that are in the business, we know that they pay a small portion of rent as a component of this. It's significantly below market, but I would say I don't have the exact number out of the 66. I think it might be 20 plus, Leslie, that are
Yeah, I think that's about right.
voucher supported.
Mhm.
Others
And the
are,
others are just your traditional tax credit rent?
yes.
Oh, okay,
That's correct. Yep, that's correct.
great. Joshua, I think the next question is for you. Please provide more information about the Community Interest Cloud Fund. What is it and who is it directed towards?
So I
And
actually think I think that question is actually for Leslie on what they did at Golaski Labs. There's a program not too dissimilar that we've been working on here in Pittsburgh called Community Wins. But I'll let Leslie take that question.
Sure. Well, I gave you a little bit of information about it, and I noticed that your other comment is that you live in a co-op, which is interesting. That's something that Greg and we have explored before and are very interested in how a co-op structure can be incorporated as well. We looked at it a while ago, trying to do a market, supermarket, Greg, if you remember,
Yes.
trying to set that structure up. And interestingly enough, one of our projects that we have now the land sits behind a building that is owned by a co-op. So it keeps kind of popping up. And it does have a kind of a crowdfund-ish feeling to it because it's a more cooperative approach to funding projects. So I'm not sure exactly what you specifically may have wanted to know about the crowd fund, but I can at least just simply say for one of the projects we raised about $47,000. For our Sharswood project that's behind Greg, we raised about $60,000 in $500 to $1,000 increments from our investors. So we have multiple investors on in each of those raises. We provide them with quarterly reports as to what's going on with the project. They will receive, once the projects are up and generating income, they'll be able to, review what their investment is gaining over the life of the project. So that's pretty much how it gets incorporated into the project. There's a lot of upfront work to be done. We do use a platform. It's funny, it's based in Pittsburgh where Joshua is. It's called Small Change. There's other platforms as well, but we went with that one because it's very focused on social impact projects. And we just thought that our missions were very much aligned, and that's why we selected that platform to use. So I encourage you, please go on smallchange.com. You'll see our projects, you'll see other great projects. And I think you'll learn a lot by going to that platform.
Yeah, and I would just add to that. One of the focuses for us is, again, community wealth building. And there are a number of different structures. There's a home ownership component, but there's a significant investment component of community wealth that low and moderate income communities aren't aware of. And that's the business we're in. And it's beyond home ownership. This is investing in assets that you may or may not live in that still have a benefit to you and to your families and to your communities. And so we certainly care about home ownership. And I know the next question deals with that, but this is something additive to that, where real wealth is being created across the world, frankly, not just in the neighborhoods where we are.
Yeah, and as we had our prep conversations, one of the things that we realized, and it's a central part of the Community Wins platform that's currently being built by Omi Solo and BNY Mellon and a few other partners here on this side of the state, is that it's really critical to think about the interrelations between where you live and an investment. Unfortunately, because of past practices of our banking system, being, living in, I'll just choose Black because I am Black, but living in an all Black neighborhood has resulted in very direct and well-researched discounts and valuations by appraisers. So living in that exciting Black middle-class neighborhood that you worked hard or a lifetime or multiple generations to build has been negative for your access to capital. Sometimes having incredible shelter may not also mean an incredible investment, whereas most folks are healed towards considering your home as this great transfer of wealth. Some of the things that we're seeing in the world might actually not change, and that may not be the case. And so we always consider the important role of transferable financial assets as an important part of the wealth equation for the community members that we aim to serve.
Wow, that's a really good point. So the next question actually is about if you're reconsidering your kind of design standards based on, with the pandemic, most of us, a lot of people are working from home, and kind of are people looking to increase the sizes of these homes, which what that means is paying more.
Have you seen Greg and Leslie's backgrounds? Absolutely not. Put a background up, and we hope our kids don't run in the room.
So we'll just say not for the time being.
It's a great question, because we're talking about it also at the Navy Yard. We talk about it here, and what we're finding is there are a couple of things. One is that depending on the community and who your target audience is, there are some specific needs that they have. Certainly, technology has become an essential service, an essential need for folks. So one of the things that Leslie and I are doing is we're incorporating high technology in all of our units, in all of our spaces. We build, for the most part, with our 80 AMI goal, we're trying to provide the most efficient space that a person can live in on their own terms. And that would be, what's the best one bedroom that we can build for somebody and have them be able to afford it. And typically where we are, and we're at market rate affordable without LIHTC, and we're right at the LIHTC numbers for that type of space. And we think that that's what's really importantly critical to folks. And then the question is, what are the other amenities that are available to people? Do they have access to other spaces? Maybe if they have working in an office space, do we have space that's available for that? Do we have a fitness center that's actually usable for the community so that they don't necessarily need that space in their apartment? Why add another bedroom so that they can have a fitness place when that's only adding costs and not significant value for them? And so we think about all of those. Outdoor space at the Navy Yard is incredibly important to folks now. We're thinking that folks do want to gather outdoors. They want to be able to have the opportunity to have open space. We're thinking about how we deliver food services as a part of what we do. Keep in mind, we're not only doing residential, we're doing residential and we're doing business development, small business development. So it's kind of the combination of the two and how they come together. in a current COVID environment, which we're working in and we're building product right now during COVID, and in a post-COVID environment. So the one thing that won't change fundamentally is the cost. So we always have to manage around delivering a quality product at a cost that people can actually afford.
You know, it always is a debate for me when we talk about design. The solution is, do we build tiny homes or are we doubling the size of our homes? Like, you know, when the solution is so at the different ends of the spectrum,
Really is.
You know, there's a merit for each one of those cases to be made.
And we believe we like the tiny home idea. What Leslie and I have tried to do, and we've been talking with Josh a lot about this as well, is what's the smallest home that we can build that is that would pass, for example, all ADA requirements. So we want it to be able to be accessible to anybody. And when you start to add that layer to it, you can't build a tiny home, right? So you have to build something that has stairs that are a certain size, that has a bathroom that's a certain size, that has a kitchen that's a certain size. And that's what we build to. Those would be the smallest standards that we would accommodate, because the other tiny homes, and we think they're great, we do think that there are some real opportunities. But now you're going to limit who can actually live in those homes, and limit who has real access to those homes. So that's a strategic decision that I think cities and developers will make. But from our perspective, we're really looking at what's the most efficient space we can build that is truly accessible to anyone.
So the next question is something that we all in our prep calls have discussed, because I think for those of us who are in the tax credit world, just somehow cannot marry modular construction and tax credits. So here we go again. Your modular projects funded by PHFA, and does the modular construction industry work with unions and trades? And you know, we've talked about the timing issue on when you get your design and when you start to get your manufacturing started for your panels. So take it away.
Yeah, Leslie's been on a lot of calls on that.
Well, the quick answer is yes. PHFA is funding modular construction. The project behind Greg is, like we said, 98 units that are being constructed modularly. PHFA is absolutely in the capital stack. It does take people to understand that the payment, once you get into construction, is much faster and heavily loaded upfront. They need a 20% deposit down, which is typically paid at closing, and typically you don't like to have that kind of money going out at closing. Then there are designated milestones where they're getting paid a third as they go into fabrication, production, and then completion of the modular construction. So the lenders and the funders have to understand how the money moves. But if you set that standard and have everyone recognize it at the beginning and agree to it, it can work. It works just fine. It works just fine. Sometimes you do have to set it up so that in between your draws, you actually get pre-approval for the dollars, so there's no delay. Because once you start fabrication, the modular company does not want to stop that line. So you may need to have money that's already approved for the funding, sitting in escrow, waiting to be released, but funders will do it. So it definitely.
So Leslie, just as a follow-up, you do have to start your fabrication much before you have your financial closing. No. Am I right about that?
No, everything happens post-financing closing. It just happens while you're in site work. So you're really having fabrication and site work going on at the same time. But typically you're almost front-loading money a little bit when you're using modular construction, and typically lenders and funders aren't comfortable with that. But once they understand the modular, they'll be fine. But it does take some education if they've never funded it before.
Yeah, what happens with modulars, because of the way they operate, they have to buy a significant amount of materials up front. And what you're really funding is their material acquisition. So that first tranche that comes in, it's really right at closing. We give them money so that they can now acquire like all the wood and nails and drywall that they need to assemble. But the only thing you're doing prior to that is engineering. You have to pay a fee to engineer the design and get that approved by third parties and others. And that's a nominal fee relative to the size of the project that we have, but you do not have to start construction in advance.
That's good to know, because I think that can really save at the back end, especially on construction interest and
Absolutely.
other costs.
Definitely.
We have so many more questions, but we are running up on our clock here. So I think we may have to wrap this up. I'm really sorry for all the other questions that we did not get to. Any last parting thoughts from any of you? This was great. This was really helpful.
So if I could just make one comment, because there's some conversations around the 4 and 9%, and I know that's in the mindset of folks around affordable housing. Ultimately, as a community, we're going to have to figure out how to build affordability without these tax credits. And that's going to lie in a couple of areas. One is, how are we acquiring the land? The second is, and more importantly, how are we constructing it? Because that's where the bulk of your costs are. You can do stuff with your architects, you can do stuff with your engineers, you can get some pre-development expense taken care of. But, and then the third is, what's the interest rate that you're getting for the cost? So you need extremely low interest rates, and you need to construct it in a way that we haven't really seen in the marketplace. That's why we're driving toward modular construction and using new technologies that are coming in, because we believe we have to start building houses the way that we build cars. And until we get to that point, we're not going to be able to fully solve this equation of affordability.
And one addition, just not interest rates, Greg, but affordable equity. That's the
Affordable
other
equity. Oh gosh.
Yes. So that's number 4 on the list. If we can combine all of that, we can be effective in building affordable housing without being completely reliant on the 4% and 9%.
Correct.
But those 4 things need to converge. So.
Yep. I would simply add that to the person who asked the question about building sustainable, non-subsidized, scattered site, single family, and small rental NOAA portfolios. All of the same things apply. You except in those cases, there's a greater dependence on the price at which you buy. Obviously, construction can go up as fast as you want it to, but you just can't. If you buy at the right price, you'll still own it in 20 years and still be losing money. And so it comes down to some pretty basic economics on the sort of what I would call a more buy and hold strategy, but there's still a lot of flexibility in the tenant Bates voucher side of the world that I know some folks are not yet exploring, that you should absolutely explore in the state of Pennsylvania.
Great.
If I can just add one comment to Josh's on the scattered site piece. Leslie and I have had a lot of people come to us about scattered site approaches that can you rehab, old properties and make them affordable. We have not seen that formula work to scale. I'll just say that. We've looked at it for a few years. We just have not seen that formula work.
Scattered sites are really hard.
Yeah, at Omisala, we've been able to make it work, but under some very, very specific scenarios. Very specific.
Yeah, it's hard to scale, to make it
and
scale.
And that's right. Exactly right. And at the core, the price has to be right.
Right.
I think we're going to have to do a part 2 of this session, because I have so many questions and people have so many questions. So I think we'll have to be mindful of that for the next conference. But thank you to all. I hope our audience, enjoyed the panel. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us. Thank you.
Great.